Hello and welcome back to the Fantasy Playmakers. What's up, guys? For today, I'm going to run back the video I put out yesterday talking about why you should draft every running back, but I'm going to talk about the wide receivers. So I'm going to go through the top 36 players using Underdog Fantasy's ADP, and I'm going to talk about the positives of drafting them, because even though I'm not going to be targeting every one of these guys, it is important to focus on the positives, because every player does have that opportunity to hit, and every player does have something going for them. So let's get started right away. And the number one guy is Tyreek Hill. And I think it's pretty clear why you'd be drafting Tyreek Hill. I mean, he has a crazy amount of upside, both in yardage and in touchdowns. He's attached to Patrick Mahomes. That offense is going to be top 3 in yards and points, so he's going to have every opportunity. And this year, he may even get more volume just because you did have Sammy Watkins leave and you didn't really bring anyone else in. So Tyreek Hill already has a lot of yardage, volume. He has that huge, big playability, and he also showed a much improved floor last year. So he's really just an all-around great fantasy option. Up next is Stefon Diggs, and I think you really just have to love the volume he's going to get. You know he's going to be locked in to be top 3 in targets, receptions, receiving yards, all those categories. He's not touchdown dependent at all. He doesn't need to go out and get you 10 plus touchdowns in a season to put up top 3 wide receiver numbers, and so that's why you have to be interested in Stefon Diggs this year. For Davante Adams, if Aaron Rodgers is back, I think he is the number 1 wide receiver, and you just saw it last year. The dude was the number 1 wide receiver by a long shot, and he even missed some games and still finished as the wide receiver 1 in total points. He's going to have such a huge target share on that offense, with or without Rodgers. So even if Rodgers doesn't come back, he's still going to get a ton of volume. He is clearly their best weapon and will be very involved in this offense. For DeAndre Hopkins, he already produced as a wide receiver 1 last year, and it was his first year with the Cardinals, so we know he is an incredibly talented wide receiver, and now he has an extra year of chemistry with Kyler Murray. I think Kyler's going to improve from his sophomore season, and now I think the biggest change from last year is that he has a little bit of help in that offense. Normally it's not ideal when a team brings in a bunch of other weapons, but for DeAndre Hopkins, he is locked into that alpha role. So the Cardinals bringing in AJ Green and Rondale Moore, I think only helps DeAndre Hopkins because it's going to take the pressure off of him. Last year, defenses could just be so heavily focused on Hopkins. I think it actually restricted him a little bit. So I think Hopkins has a great opportunity to finish as a high-end wide receiver 1. For Calvin Ridley, I think it's pretty clear that now he has the opportunity to be the alpha in this offense. With Julio Jones being traded, this is now Calvin Ridley's time to take over that number 1 role. And he finished as a high-end wide receiver 1 last year with Julio in the lineup. So if he's able to combine the big play potential he had last year with maybe some more volume in this offense, I think his stocks are looking great for this year. At number 6 in ADP, it's AJ Brown, and I think you'd be drafting him for his big play potential and just this overall efficiency in this Titans offense. I mean, we've seen it 2 straight years. AJ Brown doesn't need to go out there and get 8+ receptions, to put up solid numbers. You can count on him going out every week and going for like 4 receptions, 100 yards, and a touchdown. He's proven that he can do it consistently. I expect this offense to be very concentrated in terms of touches. So I think Derrick Henry, AJ Brown, and Julio Jones are all going to be able to feast. So AJ Brown should be set for a wide receiver 1 season. Now we've got DK Metcalf, and I think his biggest positive is being attached to Russell Wilson. You know that Seattle Seahawks offense is going to be throwing the ball a lot. There's going to be a lot of touchdown opportunities and just a lot of volume out there. And he has established himself as the clear-cut alpha in that offense. And after putting up a wide receiver 1 season last year, I don't think there's any reason to suspect he falls off this year. For Justin Jefferson, I think you're drafting him because of how impressive he was as a rookie. One of the best rookie wide receiver seasons of all time. 1,400 yards, was a wide receiver 1 for fantasy, just absolutely dominated, and really nothing has changed in this offense. He's going to be the alpha this year, and if anything, I just think he's going to improve. He's going to be a better player, more well-rounded player, and will have the opportunity to go for another wide receiver 1 season. At number 9, I think Mike Thomas's upside is pretty clear, and it's that he has the chance to be the big-time volume receiver in the Saints offense. If you're looking at the weapons the Saints have, they are not really stacked in terms of pass catchers. You basically have Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara, who I think are going to be the two clear leaders in targets and receptions. And Michael Thomas has shown in years past that he 100% can be the alpha wide receiver and command an absolutely huge amount of volume. So no matter who the quarterback is, Michael Thomas should still be a volume machine. Just like Mike Thomas, I think Keenan Allen has a lot of similar things going for him, just in terms of being a volume receiver on his offense. Keenan Allen is going to be the easy number one target on the Chargers, and he's going to be a volume monster. You know, he's not a huge big play guy, but he is going to command a lot of targets. He's going to catch a lot of passes, go for 1,000 plus receiving yards easy if he stays healthy. And another huge positive for Keenan Allen is that he has Justin Herbert there. Justin Herbert lit it up as a rookie, and I truly think he is probably a top 10 NFL quarterback right now. And so he's going to improve after his rookie year and come out even better, which just sets Keenan Allen up to have a great year. Up next, it's Terry McLaurin, and it finally seems like Terry has some things going for him. You bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick, which just totally elevates Terry McLaurin's ceiling. It seemed like his rookie and sophomore season, he was one of these guys, kind of like Allen Robinson, where you're like, oh, what could he do if he had a quarterback? You knew he had the talent, but you just didn't have a guy that could get him the ball consistently. Now he has that with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Historically, Fitzpatrick has been great at supporting his number one weapon, and Terry is going to be the number one guy in that offense. And just to help him out a little bit more, he was kind of experiencing the same thing that DeAndre Hopkins was last year, where there was just not a lot of other guys around him to kind of protect him in terms of coverages. He was getting a lot of attention. So this offseason, they went out, they got Curtis Samuel, drafted Dyami Brown, which I think is just going to help open things up on the field for Terry. I just mentioned this guy, but here at number 12, it's Allen Robinson. And actually similar to Terry McLaurin, I think the reason you'd be drafting Allen Robinson is this newfound upside with Justin Fields. We know that Allen Robinson is one of the safest and just most consistent wide receivers. He's been putting up borderline wide receiver one numbers his entire career, despite his quarterbacks being Blake Bortles, Mitch Trubisky, and Nick Foles, just a garbage lineup. But he already has that security, and now you have a potential franchise quarterback there in Justin Fields. I think it just bumps up Allen Robinson's ceiling a little bit more than it was at before. On to the next 12 wide receivers. At number 13, it's Amari Cooper, and I think you've just got to like the role he has in this offense. I think he's locked into that alpha spot with the Cowboys, and this is going to be a crazy high volume offense. The Cowboys defense is just super subpar, so they're going to need to be throwing the ball, scoring points the entire game, and that is only going to help out Amari Cooper. We saw the crazy pace that Dak was on last year, and I know he's not going to go out there and throw for 7,000 yards or whatever his pace was, but I do think it's a great sign how effective and explosive this offense was. When Dak was on the field, Amari Cooper was a wide receiver one, and I think he just continues where he left off with Dak in 2020. Up next, it's Amari Cooper's teammate, CeeDee Lamb, and I think they have some similarities and differences in why you'd be drafting them. Overall, the situation of being on a high volume passing attack, I think is also great for CeeDee Lamb, but I don't think he's the alpha of that offense, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. CeeDee Lamb is going to operate mainly out of the slot, and I think that actually gives him a little bit more security potentially, just because he's basically locked into that volume. So, basically just two different types of players on the same team. Up next, it's Mike Evans, and I think his upside is pretty clear. You just look at this Buccaneers passing attack. It is very explosive. It is high volume. And what do the Bucs want to do? They want to push the ball down the field. No risk it, no biscuit. That's Bruce Arians' mantra. And what does Mike Evans do? He is a true deep threat. And I also think he has an underrated floor. We've seen him go for 1,000 receiving yards in every single one of his NFL seasons. That's incredibly impressive. So he's going to be locked in as Tom Brady's number one deep threat. He's going to be the guy they look to in the red zone, a big-bodied receiver who's able to go up and secure those goal line touches. So I just really like how Mike Evans is basically able to score his points everywhere. He could go out, get you 8 receptions, or he could go for 2 receptions, 50 yards, and a touchdown. He can really do everything, and I think that's really going to be nice this year for the Buccaneers offense. At number 16, it's Julio Jones, and a lot of the things I said about A.J. Brown's situation also applies to Julio Jones, but they definitely are very different in terms of their play style. Like I mentioned, the Titans offense is very efficient, and I think that's definitely going to benefit Julio. Also, I think it's going to be a concentrated offense. I mentioned that, and Julio Jones is one of those guys who's going to be fed the ball. And I think him and A.J. Brown are a pretty nice pairing because A.J. Brown is that big play guy. He's going to want to stretch the ball down the field, and Julio Jones is going to be able to operate as a target machine in this offense. If you could criticize Julio Jones in terms of a fantasy player, I think you would say that that touchdown upside just really hasn't been there for him. He's basically locked in to go for 1,200 plus yards, but he's not a guy who's locked in to 10 plus touchdowns. He may actually have the opportunity to do that this year with the Titans just because they do score touchdowns at a very high rate. Next up, it's Robert Woods, and I've actually talked about him in a couple different videos this offseason, and I really like Robert Woods. You'd be drafting him because he is a very safe option, a guy who's basically locked in to finish as a wide receiver 2 every season. He stays on the field. He's going to be very consistent. He's going to get enough work, basically quarterback proof in the way they use him. But this year, I think he has even more going for him. With Matthew Stafford coming in, I think his ceiling has definitely risen. So a guy that I think you can have a lot of confidence in on a week-to-week basis, who also may have a newfound boom potential this year. For DJ Moore, I think he's honestly quietly turning into one of those guys who hasn't really played with a solid quarterback, one of those Allen Robinsons or Terry McLaurins before this year. But DJ Moore the past couple seasons has put up some solid wide receiver 2 numbers despite not getting a lot of help from the quarterback position. But I think he does have a little bit of hope this year because he did have that security in terms of a season-long player. Maybe he's not the most consistent on a week-to-week basis, but you know where he's going to finish in his season-wide totals. But now you have Sam Darnold coming in, and Sam Darnold didn't look great with the Jets, but I really like these Panthers coaches, Matt Rule and Joe Brady, and so I think if anyone can turn around Sam Darnold, it's those guys. And if Sam Darnold does click, then I think DJ Moore's ceiling goes through the roof because he is an incredibly talented wide receiver. At number 19, it's Chris Godwin, and some of the same things I said about Mike Evans are going to apply to Chris Godwin. The fact that the Buccaneers are going to be a high-scoring, high-volume offense is obviously great for Godwin, and I do just like that he's shown that he can be a high-end wide receiver 1. We saw him and Mike Evans finish as top tier wide receiver 1s in 2019, so it is nice to know that he does have that ability in him. And also, I think he has a good opportunity to be one of Tom Brady's favorite volume receivers this year. But, he's not one of these guys who only operates out of the slot and is just going for, 10-yard chunks. He can also push the ball down the field. So another one of these Buccaneers receivers who has some versatility in that offense. Up next, it's Ja'Marr Chase. And I think the reason you are drafting him is pretty clear. You look at what he did at LSU as a sophomore. He was the best receiver on that team, and Justin Jefferson was on that team. And look what Justin Jefferson did in his first year in the NFL. Absolutely went crazy. So I don't even think we know what Ja'Marr Chase's NFL ceiling is, even as a rookie. And then he goes into the NFL and gets drafted by the team who had his starting quarterback when he did go off. Him and Joe Burrow are reunited, and I do think this Bengals offense is going to be a high-volume passing attack. I think they're going to be feeding these wide receivers. You have Chase, Higgins, and Boyd, so they're going to want to get those guys involved. So Ja'Marr Chase definitely has a lot of upside this year, and it's reflected in how high he's ranked as a rookie. For Tyler Lockett, he has some pretty serious weekly upside, and it kind of seems like that's why he's being avoided this offseason. But if I'm looking at the pros for Tyler Lockett, this man can go out and single-handedly win you a week. We saw it last year. He had a couple games where he just absolutely went crazy, basically could lock up a win for you. And also, if you look at his season finish, he was a wide receiver 1. And so if you can get a guy who can finish as a wide receiver 1, as a late end wide receiver 2, maybe even a early wide receiver 3, I think that can really provide some incredible value. At 22, I have Cooper Kupp. And when you're looking at Cooper Kupp compared to Robert Woods, I think in the past, Robert Woods has been more of the safe option, and Cooper Kupp has been kind of this higher upside play. And I think Cooper Kupp is going to come into this year again and have huge upside. Last year he struggled, but it was really just due to a lack of touchdowns. And I do not think that's going to be a problem this year because you have Matthew Stafford coming in. So if Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford are able to click, I would not be shocked if Cooper Kupp finishes as a very high-end wide receiver 2 or even a wide receiver 1 like we've seen in years past. And I think honestly this is the best situation he's been in, so I don't even know if we know what his true ceiling is. For Adam Thielen, I think you're drafting him just because of his track record of success as a fantasy wide receiver. He's proven that he can finish as a wide receiver 2 or even a wide receiver 1 in fantasy football, and really not much has changed this offseason. I think this Minnesota Vikings offense is kind of comparable to the Tennessee Titans. I think their weapons are just a little bit weaker, but if you're talking about a concentrated target share, it's going to be Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, and Dalvin Cook just dominating those carries. So Adam Thielen is going to have a lot of opportunity this year, and you're getting a guy as a late wide receiver 2 who put up wide receiver 1 production last season. Up next here, we just talked about his teammate a couple players ago, but it's T. Higgins from the Bengals. And I think the reason you're drafting T. Higgins is honestly because we don't really know what Ja'Marr Chase is going to do. Yes, Ja'Marr Chase does have a lot of upside, but we've never seen him play in the NFL. So it is a little risky to just go out there and say, he's automatically going to hit, which is basically where he's being drafted right now. So T. Higgins has already proven to us that he is a very capable NFL wide receiver. And if Ja'Marr Chase kind of stumbles out of the gate, T. Higgins could be a value here if he's able to lock up that number 1 wide receiver role. Like I talked about, I think this Bengals offense is going to be throwing the ball a lot, and T. Higgins could be the number 1 beneficiary of that. All right, we're on to the last 12 wide receivers. At ADP 25, it's Deontay Johnson, and I think it's pretty clear why you'd be drafting him. It's just going to be the amount of volume he's lined up to get. We saw him get an insane amount of targets last season, and that was with him leaving games early for injury. He even got benched in one half for drops, which obviously isn't ideal. But, if he's able to lock it all in, he's going to be one of the most targeted players in the NFL. And even if you're not on a super efficient offense, or even if you're not getting a ton of touchdown opportunity, just getting, 140, 150 touches is going to give you such a safe floor and a decent ceiling, especially in half-point PPR and PPR formats. Up next, it's Kenny Golladay, and I really think you just have to be buying into his talent. He's proven to us that he can be a high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1. He is a super talented deep threat, and so you just kind of have to buy in that the Giants are going to be able to kind of conform to his play style. He's going to elevate Daniel Jones. You give him a true wide receiver 1, and that's really where Kenny Galladay's upside is going to come from. For Brandon Ayuk, I'd be drafting him because I think he's going to be the number 1 wide receiver on this team. He put up a super impressive rookie season, kind of went under the radar, and even though he didn't play a lot of the games with both Kittle and Debo in the lineup, when he was given the opportunity, he produced. So, it's not his fault that he didn't get to play with those guys, and with a jump he could take from his rookie to sophomore season, he has a lot of upside here as the potential wide receiver 1 for the 49ers. Now at 28, it is Odell Beckham. And this is pretty obvious for why you'd be drafting Odell. It's because you've seen years ago, Odell Beckham was one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. He's kind of stumbled in recent years, but he has a track record of production that is not even comparable to these guys that are getting picked around him. At one point in his career, he was considered to be like a number 1, number 2, maybe number 3 wide receiver in overall rankings. And so he does have that potential. So, maybe he's able to go out this year and put together a vintage season. For Chase Claypool, I think you'd be targeting him basically for the opposite reason that you'd be targeting his teammate Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson is going to be the volume guy. Chase Claypool is not. He is a high upside player. He showed off as a rookie last year, put together a great season, had a lot of touchdown upside, and really put together some huge weeks. So if he's able to make another jump from his rookie to sophomore season, he could be in for a lot of boom games this year. Now at number 30, it's Courtland Sutton, and I really think you just have to like his talent overall. He's kind of been forgotten about since his season-ending injury, but he is just a very talented guy and is lined up to be the wide receiver 1 with the Broncos. Up next, it's DJ Chark, and I think you have to be hoping that he is able to beat out Laviska and Marvin Jones and take over that alpha wide receiver role because you have much more talent at the quarterback position than you've had in years past. You now have Trevor Lawrence throwing you the ball, and so if he really can secure that number 1 role, he's likely to be a value here as a lower-end wide receiver 3. At number 32, it's Robbie Anderson, and he really has a level of safety that not a lot of these other guys around him have. Robbie Anderson is going to be a volume machine on this Panthers offense. They showed last year how they want to use him. They're going to get him a lot of touches. He's going to have a very nice floor for you. And he also has that connection with Sam Darnold, which may give him a leg up in terms of, chemistry. Sam Darnold is going to feel comfortable with him, probably more so than the other receivers. So that should help him out throughout this season as well. So a very low risk player this late in the draft, which is something that's going to be pretty uncommon. With Devontae Smith, you really just have to like his potential as the alpha in that Philadelphia Eagles offense. No one has gone out and claimed the number one role on the Eagles. I mean, they had a committee at wide receiver last year, and their top pick from 2020, Jalen Reagor, has not really broken out. He didn't have a super impressive season last year, so this wide receiver one role is wide open. And I mean, if you just look at his college production, he's definitely likely the better prospect over Jalen Reagor. So if he can produce right away, he is definitely going to outperform this ADP of 33. At number 34, I have Jerry Jeudy. And I think the hope for Jeudy is that he's able to challenge Courtland Sutton for that wide receiver one role. Obviously, if he's able to take over the number one spot, he definitely has a lot more value. And I think that's kind of what you're banking on here, going for him as wide receiver 34. Up next, it's Deebo Samuel, and even though he struggled to kind of stay on the field in 2020, I think you got to look back at the solid rookie season he put up in 2019. He definitely has the potential to be the wide receiver one in this offense, and you could argue that the 49ers kind of like to use him more creatively than they use Ayuk. They like to get Deebo involved right away. They get the ball in his hands so he can make plays. They run jet sweeps, screens, all that stuff. So it could give Deebo Samuel a decent floor, especially if Trey Lance comes in, because those touches are going to be much more valuable if you do have a running quarterback there. To wrap up the top 36 wide receivers ADP, the last guy here at number 36 is Tyler Boyd. And even though you do have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins there, I think you're drafting Tyler Boyd as more of a safer play. I think you kind of know what you're getting out of him. T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are both going to be out wide, so I don't think they're going to cut into Tyler Boyd's overall touches too much because he does kind of own that slot role. So if he's kind of able to just do his thing in the slot while Higgins and Chase battle for targets out wide, I think that's kind of where you're getting your value with Boyd. All right, that is going to wrap up why I would draft the top 36 wide receivers. And like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, even though I'm not going to be targeting, every single player, I definitely think there are some values and maybe some worse picks in this ADP. It is important to just look at the upside that every player has because there is really a reason to draft every single one of these guys. But that's all I have for you guys today. If you guys enjoyed the video, please just make sure you leave a like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. And also let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. But thank you guys so much for watching and listening. Stay tuned tomorrow. I'm going to be putting out an Amari Cooper versus CeeDee Lamb player versus player comparison, breaking down both of those guys, talking about which one I would prefer to draft. So make sure you guys watch out for that. But that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you, and see you guys tomorrow.